Welcome back to Lineage of Lies, where we sit with the quiet women nobody counts, right up until the room finds out exactly who it was talking to. Drop a comment where you're watching from, and be sure to subscribe. I'm Melanie Sinclair, 46 years old. At my son's wedding, my sister Sandra lifted her glass toward his boss, smiled that smile she uses when she wants something, and said, "This is my sister, the unemployed one who lives off the family." A fork stopped halfway to someone's mouth. The whole table of strangers turned. I laughed. I had practiced that laugh. Then the man beside her set his glass down, slow and careful, and Sandra's smile froze. Because the man she just tried to impress had spent 3 years trying to find me. 3 years earlier, I was days from being named managing partner of a strategy firm. I ran rooms. I built frameworks companies still use. Then my phone rang, my mother, stage 4 pancreatic. I could keep the door or I could keep the time. I chose the time. I called Sandra. She said something quick and light that I wouldn't understand for 3 full years. Then she said, "I can't just throw away everything I've built," and I said I would do it. 2 years of medication schedules, 6 a.m. appointments, learning the language of oncology. My phone went quiet, then dead. The last good week, my mother held my hand and said, "They'll measure you by the room you're in. Don't you dare measure yourself the same way." We laughed. It was real. She died in the spring. At the funeral, people talked about me in the past tense, how I used to be so impressive. Sandra flew in, cried beautifully, and told a cousin she was worried about me finding my footing again. By the end of the reception, she'd become the grieving daughter, and I was the tired woman who'd handled things. That's the thing about caregiving. You give up the visible life, and the people with visible lives get to narrate what yours was worth. A year later, my son Ethan called. He was getting married to Claire, who was kind and steady. Then he got quiet. "Mom, Aunt Sandra's going to be there, and she's got her whole thing about you being between jobs. Can you just not engage with it? It's just one day." My own son asking me to be small. I said, "Of course, honey." Then I asked where he worked. "Meridian Strategy Group," he said. Sandra had helped him get the interview. She was a manager there. I knew Meridian. I had competed against them for a decade. I'd built a decision mapping framework that had become house knowledge there, so ordinary no one remembered it had an author. Sandra had climbed her whole career on top of it without ever once asking me a real question about who I'd been. I told my son nothing. I was just so tired of explaining that I used to matter. The rehearsal dinner. Private room, folded napkins, Sandra holding court. She wore success like a fragrance, dropping her CEO's name, David Mercer, into every third sentence. Claire's mother asked me kindly what I did. Before I could answer, Sandra laughed. "Oh, Mel's between things. She's been between things for a while." She wrapped the knife in fondness. Then she fanned her Navy business cards across the table toward Claire's father, turned to me, and said, "Do you have one to give them, Mel? Anything at all?" I sat empty-handed while her little cards lay there like proof of who was real. I smiled. I said no. That night I took down an old photograph, my mother and me at a conference, her beaming in the back row at a keynote she didn't understand. I asked myself the ugly question, if I don't produce anything, am I anything? Some part of me had started to believe Sandra's math. The morning of the wedding, Ethan needed help with his tie. He said what he'd asked on the phone wasn't fair. I told him this was his day and I wouldn't be an ounce of trouble. I meant it as a gift. I didn't know then that piece wasn't mine to keep. Someone else was going to reach for the pin. The reception, long hall, grapevines, string lights. I was seated at the back. I watched Sandra orbit an older man, silver at the temples, David Mercer. She refreshed his drink, laughed too long, steering him my way. She was going to use me as scenery, show her CEO how gracious she was to her poor between-jobs sister. She arrived at my table glowing. David, this is my sister I was telling you about. Melanie, the unemployed one, lives off the family. She's been between things for years now. Bless her. She said it smiling. I laughed, almost gentle. She's right. I don't have a title anymore. I meant it as surrender. But as I said it, the words turned, they stopped being an apology. The calm man set his glass down on the linen, slow and deliberate. I'm sorry, I don't think we've met properly. What did you say your name was? Melanie. Sandra jumped in, Sinclair. She's a Sinclair like me, obviously. David Mercer's eyes never left my face. Melanie Sinclair. Not the Melanie Sinclair, the one who wrote the decision mapping framework. I said, a long time ago. He exhaled. My entire analytics division still runs on your long time ago. He told the table how Meridian had adopted my framework across the whole firm, how it was the backbone of their decisions. How he'd taken over as CEO 3 years ago and the first outside hire he'd wanted was me. Every recruiting cycle, they'd put my name at the top of the list and tried again. You'd gone completely off the map. I couldn't understand how someone that good just vanishes. My mother got sick. I went to take care of her. She died last year. The words landed. David nodded slowly. So while I had a team searching every firm in the country for you, you were at a hospital. Beside him, Sandra had turned a specific shade of gray. She tried to recover, well, I mean, that was ages ago. She's not really in the industry anymore. The field moves on. David Mercer turned his head and looked at her, the way you read a document for the second time and catch what you missed. The warmth left his face. Sandra, he said, so quiet people leaned in, I just watched you introduce your own sister, a woman our entire firm is indebted to, as an unemployed loser at her son's wedding to impress me. That tells me everything I needed to know and didn't want to. HR will be in touch first thing Monday. I think you already know why. Sandra made a small, airless sound. My son appeared, wide-eyed. And then Sandra looked at me across the wreckage and said, almost to herself, you were always the one they remembered. In that sentence, I finally understood her cruelty, not heartlessness, but terror that if she ever stepped out of her lit room, the world would forget she was there, the way she believed it had always defaulted to noticing me. I stood up. Everyone expected me to deliver a final line to Sandra. I didn't. I asked David Mercer for a word. Don't fire my sister because of me, I said. If she's crossed a line your firm draws, that's your business. But I won't have a woman destroyed on my behalf. That's not a win I want to own. He studied me, then smiled. You're exactly the person I spent 3 years looking for. People like you don't leave a trail. You leave a legacy and walk off. Then he made his pitch, leadership role, top salary, a press release announcing Melanie Sinclair was back. He set his own heavy business card on the cocktail table between us, the best card in the room. I looked at that card. Everything hungry in me leaned toward it. Take the title. Walk back vindicated. Let Sandra read about it. That was the win, by every measure I'd used for 20 years. But winning her game meant still agreeing to play it. I heard my mother, don't you dare measure yourself the same way. The 2 years by that hospital bed had been the fullest work of my life. No applause, no resume line, and not a gap. I had almost believed the world over my own hands. I picked up David Mercer's card, held it so he'd know I understood what I was refusing, and slid it gently back. Thank you. You have no idea what it means that you remembered. But I didn't lose myself out there. This room just forgot how to see. I don't need to be restored. I need to build my own table, one where the first question isn't what's your title, but who did you take care of? He was quiet a moment. Then he laughed, put the card away, and said, then I'll be your first client. We shook hands. I'd walked in with nothing, turned down everything, and had never felt richer. I found Ethan. I told him his wedding was still perfect, that nothing at that table was his to carry, and that his mother was more all right than she'd been in 3 years. Across the hall, Sandra sat alone, her Navy cards nowhere in sight. I caught her eye and gave her one small nod. Not forgiveness, exactly. Acknowledgement. 2 sisters raised by the same rules, and only one of us had just walked free. That was a year ago. I built the table. Sinclair's strategy is small: 3 people, a handful of clients, David Mercer the first. It's not an empire. I'm not chasing the biggest room anymore. Sandra landed at a lesser firm. We aren't close. Some breaks don't heal into something stronger, they just heal enough to stop bleeding. Ethan and Claire come for dinner often. Claire is pregnant, and my son hugs me like a man who knows exactly what his mother is worth. Last week I interviewed a woman who'd been out of work 3 years caring for her father. When she braced for the usual question about the gap, I didn't ask about it. I asked her to tell me about her dad. She started to cry, then to talk. I knew I'd hire her before she finished. A card, a laugh, a quiet man setting down his glass. If there's a quiet woman in your life holding more than the room can see, tell her today. Subscribe to Lineage of Lies, and I'll see you in the next one.